Traders, when they wake up tomorrow morning, they see that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and the SAVAK still has serious control over the government in Iran, despite the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei. You're going to see that crude oil prices will jump. But OPEC says they have an emergency meeting in Vienna today by conference call, and they most likely are going to announce an increase in supply of 400,000 barrels per day to avoid any sharp spike. And you can also see that protection and indemnity insurance, which is like a PI indemnity insurance for companies who own shipping vessels and ship around the world, has announced that they are canceling contracts and they are increasing their premiums by another 50%.
Right.
Crude oil prices will go up. The implication for Nigeria is that the revenue accretion for the government is going to increase because the government benchmark for crude oil prices is about around $64.85 per barrel for 2026 Appropriation Act. But on the other hand, if crude oil prices go up, the price of petroleum products will go up because we're now in a post-subsidy era, and any increase in the price of crude oil means that the refinery, for example, Dangote refinery, is going to have to revise its price based on its cracking margins on the realities we have on ground today.
Okay. And while all of this, of course, is going to increase Nigeria's FX inflows, could you once again state what the price of oil is today, and how does this negatively affect or impact our domestic economy, especially given that, we have a continued reliance on imported products?
Look, I mean, thank God that we're no longer, completely reliant on importing transportation fuels into Nigeria. 62% of the supply of petroleum products today, mostly AGO, jet fuel, and premium motor spirits, is actually, comes from a domestic refiner. So definitely you're going to see that LNG prices will go up. The price of LNG will go up for spot prices, not for forward prices. Naturally, that should impact on whatever revenues that are due to the Federation from NLNG, even if it doesn't have a lot of room because the amount of spots it has is very limited. It has issues around the supply of gas feedstock. If crude oil price goes up to about $100, it will have impact on how much revenues comes to the government, especially now with Executive Order 9 that the president has signed that says that 30% of profit oil and gas should be paid directly from PSE assets to the Federation account without going to NNPC in line with Section 64, 1 and 3 and 4 of the PI. Okay? But, the near-term implication also, is that, look, if crude oil prices go up, the price of PMS and diesel will go up in Nigeria, which might impact on the cost price index inflation in Nigeria and that inflation to interest yield curve outlook that the central bank is looking at. So it's a double-edged sword.
All right, Kevin, I get you. I get your point, very well, double-edged sword. But then, if Nigeria has not been able to meet its OPEC quota, for, I believe, about 4 or 5 consecutive, if not 6 years consecutively, we're struggling in terms of our output. If the outcome of the emergency OPEC meeting says, you are allowed additional 400,000 barrels a day, what does that say to Nigeria that we've not been able to meet our quota ab initio? And then specifically in terms of what to expect, I get the point that at $65 a barrel that is in our budget for 2026, if oil, as we are hearing, if crude goes to about $72, $75, that's a gain for Nigerian government. If it goes beyond $100, of course, that's also like a windfall. But to the ordinary people, who will be patronizing the pump price, what will that mean? For Dangote refinery, for example, are we likely to go back to more than 1,000 naira per liter if it goes to more than $100 per barrel?
Steve, it's a painful reality that in 2026 we're still talking about 1.45, 1.47. A few times you see the output go above 1.5 million temporarily, and then it will drop back. It's a very painful reality. Steve, I've always said that the issues we have upstream in E&P, they are more structural than they are. There's a fiscal side to it, but there are more structural issues that needs to be tackled by the government. I don't know if I have time to talk about the issues around the governance and financial model, and the fact that NNPC as concessionaire has not done such a great job with the JVs and the PSCs, and the fact that, Nigeria still, the government can still not categorically say that the numbers that are reported by NAPIMS and NNPC as daily production is actually what Nigeria produces, because Nigeria remains one of those few countries in the world that doesn't have an hydrocarbon accounting framework end to end to tell it real time, not based on fiscal inspectors at flow stations, lease accountability custody transfer units telling it what the flow rates are, for the daily production. You need wellhead metering first. For me, that is the bucket that is leaking. It says that if you pour water into a basket, regardless of how intense the flow rate of the water is, the ability for the basket to hold the water will not change, because the basket has holes that leaks. If you don't plug the holes, even if you increase the flow rate of the output for crude, you still will not be able to make significant progress. So, the government needs to focus on first setting up an hydrocarbon accounting framework that is automated, number one. The government needs to focus on, remodeling its petroleum fiscal regime, and repurposing NNPC, as a joint venture partner and as also a direct operator through NEPL. Yank off the forward financial and technical service agreement model is always operated. Yank off the carry agreement structure where the operators carry it and then inflate cost recoveries and cheat the federation in revenues. Work on structural issues that can reduce the unit cost production per barrel, so that you can increase output steadily over time. But, on the question you asked on the implication of a rising price, increase in crude oil price on pump prices of petrol, this is the reality. In post-subsidy, where Section 205 has been implemented and the government is not providing an under recovery from its domestic crude intervention stock of 445,000 per barrel. Any increase in price of crude oil by $5-10, and especially with the likely increase in premiums charged by Protection and Indemnity Club, which is a pool for shippers around the world. Especially when you consider that Dangote is also importing about 50% of the crude that it uses to refine in Lagos. It's simply going to translate to an increase in the price of petroleum products, unfortunately.
If price
goes above $85, if
to,
price goes above $85 a barrel, we might see petrol prices trade at over 1,000 naira per liter.
More than 1,000. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So we should be prepared, like Boy Scout.